and welcome to the TNT pre-show. We're here in season 2, episode 4, that's sponsored by HSBC Bank Canada. This is your opportunity, as in weeks past, to check your audio, check your video, and settle in for the next 45 minutes of what should prove to be a tantalizing broadcast. The COVID pandemic is still upon us here in British Columbia, with health order restrictions in place till February 5th, and I would ask everyone to respect those in your respective province and or country. Here at the Audain Art Museum, we're taking every precaution to keep our visitors and staff safe. The museum is open every Thursday to Sunday, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. So, as in all our episodes, we do a little online advertising. First, for all things Emily Carr, we have this wonderful tote bag that's available in our shop, and it features an image of one of the museum's most famous works, war canoes. Similarly, we have a Audain Art Museum coloring book. Oh, and just by chance, the cover is yet another Emily Carr work, Crazy Stare. Thank you, Jim Moody. And lastly, but certainly not least, from our contemporary collection, we have this wonderful postcard, and we have a range of postcards from works in our collection. This is a contemporary piece by Dana Claxton called Paint Up number 1. So again, all of these things are available in person at the shop or at audainartmuseum.com. So we're ready to roll into the broadcast. And here we go. Okay. Welcome to Tuesday Night Talks, sponsored by HSBC Bank Canada. And as mentioned, we're still in the midst of a pandemic with millions of lives lost worldwide and in hundreds of thousands here in Canada. Tonight, we're in the second last of the permanent collection galleries, and we're going to focus on the work behind me, which is an oil and mixed media on vintage music paper of 2007, entitled Musical Notes by Angela Grossmann, and it's a gift of Michael Audain and Yoshi Karasawa to the collection. We're also hitting a really nice standard here on TNT. We have over 300 people registered, and thank you to all our viewers for the ongoing success of this virtual initiative from here in Whistler on the shared territories of the Squamish and Lillooet nations. And now, live from her studio in Gastown, Vancouver, welcome, Angela Grossmann.
Hello. Hi, nice to be here. I hope I will be tantalizing, as you said. Great.
I'm absolutely sure, and you have a wonderful red and blue flanked backdrop. Perhaps, Angela, we can jump right into a discussion of musical notes, and we'll bring a full image up onto the screen.
Okay, great.
Okay, and can you talk about maybe the materials and how this piece came about for you?
Okay, it's really nice to see it again. It's like actually visiting with an old friend, somebody I spent some time with. And I have to now go back into that time and how that evolved, how she evolved. It's on a musical sheet. Now, I can explain why it's on a musical sheet a little bit further into the slides when I can explain where the musical sheet came from. But it is a musical sheet. It's just one. It's part of a song. It's a snatch of a song. And the words on the song are really quite evocative. It was from a children's school, and this was a musical sheet from children, so I couldn't quite conceive of them singing these words, but nevertheless they did. And I was doing a body of work at that time that I call Alpha Girls, and it was about girls coming of age and that fraught territory, how they do it, how we still do it. It's got a quality about it that I'm looking at now that sort of feels like it's a long time ago. There's a memory element. I don't know when the time is. She seems to be frail yet fashioned, like almost maybe 12 or 13 years old. Yeah.
And you mentioned the lyrics, and I can read them. It says, "My darling moans for me." And when we were talking earlier, it would be hard to imagine children singing that. How do you feel both the lyrics and the use of a musical sheet plays off against the image of this teenage girl?
I think it says, "Who moans for me?" And that sort of feels a little bit odd for a children's song. I think I was probably drawn to it because of the moans, but also because of the shape. She seems to echo some of the shapes in the musical notes. There's something about her that looks like she's part of the music when I look at her now. She's embedded, she's enmeshed in it, but I don't know, because of the random nature of putting images together with surfaces, I don't know exactly what the moans for me feels, there's a sort of a depth or a sadness there. There's a loss. There's a memory. There's sort of something under the surface that we feel is lost. And I don't know how to explain that, but that's how I sort of create things. I associate things with things, and things happen.
And in terms of the actual kind of way in which you render the female figure, it has somewhat of what I would refer to as a blur effect. So it's not a very exacting or graphic rendering, but I would say more gestural in orientation. Can you speak to the way in which you render figures?
Yeah, I think she's there, but she's also dripping. She's there, but she's not there. She's there, an echo of herself. Something sort of coming out, but also going back. She looks almost like a skater for me. I mean, I don't know why. Maybe it's the white over the top. And I do talk about it as if I didn't make it, of course, which is odd. But I do sometimes talk about my work as if I haven't made it and that it's just there and I now have to account for it, which is quite regular for me to have a dissociation with it. Though at the time there would be a really direct relationship. Now I feel I can look at it as if it was somebody else's, and that often happens for me.
Well, that's very interesting. It's kind of a ghostly figure that fades away from you in time.
Well, that is about memory. There's ghostliness to it. There's something about time and us just passing through it. I think that she looks like she's passing through it. I don't want to sound too grotesque or sinister, but there's something about that there. And the fact that it's black and white, and the fact that there are those words, and there's that sort of ethereal white ball over her head, which I cannot account for.
That was my next question, but maybe I won't go there if we can't account for it.
But the ethereal white ball over her head, I have no idea. These things happen in the moment, and I just throw up my hands, really.
Okay, well, we'll just leave it an ethereal white ball, and perhaps we can move to the next slide, Justine, and you can begin to place this work in context with your other work.
This is more readable, I suppose, in what it's saying. It's a group of girls, one of them looking out at us in sort of somewhat of a control situation, with the other girls sort of very much part of some inner dynamic that's happening between them. Again, this is I start the collage here quite in earnest, although I'm really a painter, but I am a painter. But I'm also very interested in photography, not interested in making photographs, but interested in what photographs are and how much I love them. And because they exist, because there was a time, because those people were there once. They're always, when I use photographs from random places, and usually probably about more than 50 to 100 years old, I get found photographs and I bring them in to the contemporary world. So these girls have got contemporary bodies, and so I like forming a play. They're actors for me. They're saying what I'm sort of interested in. I'm using them as my subjects.
And can you speak to the scale of this work and
oh yeah, sorry,
material?
this is a very big piece. It's probably around 6-7 foot high, and it's on thick watercolor paper. So you get a lot of sort of paint, but you also get just the paper, and it's almost a Shakespearean sort of like inner things going on at this conversation, which I can only imagine what it's about. One of them looks like she's crying. Yeah, again, this is about girls and the way that they sort of develop themselves. I started this body of work when my son was around 12, and I would go to the school to pick him up, and I would be in the playground, and I realized at around 7 or 8 grade that the girls were about 15 years older, and all of a sudden, in about 6 months, they were mature, or what looked to be mature. Of course, they weren't mature, but and then they were separating away from the boys in a way that I found intriguing, and it also brought up memories of myself at that age. So I sort of traversed this environment quite personally, both from a mother's point of view and also from a memory point of view.
And I'm curious in terms of the scale. Do you want is it almost? Are these almost life size? And what
they're
does that
almost
affect?
life size, but they're never quite life size. They're always a little bit smaller than life size, so that when you stand away from them, it's like you would they are the size that they would be if you were observing them. So they're always people that we're observing, and it's very much about being aware of being looked at, which is something that happens at this age. They are aware of the way that they appear. And that's what separates that age from boys who are not aware of how they appear. And yet girls, I think girls probably are aware of how they appear from a very young age, but at this particular point, eroticism, sexuality, all of that comes into play. Their bodies develop in a manner that, their flesh defies them. It takes over.
That's an excellent characterization of the difference between boys and girls at that age. I know as a former boy, I didn't really worry about what I looked like as much as what I smelled like.
It was that too. Yeah.
Okay, So
Next slide.
perhaps we can move on to the next. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, so this particular girl is, grappling with her bits and pieces as they occur. I mean, she's looking for a way of sort of finding her identity by trying on lots of different clothes and, does this work? How does this make me look? What she's carrying, the bag she's carrying, the zip on her trousers is sort of, taut and about to burst. And she's on a big, she's also big, about 6 feet, and she's on an old tarp. She's on a used canvas awning from a store, and it's canvas, so it refers to painting. So there's a lot of paint bits around her, and yeah, that's what she's doing.
And I'm just curious about more the material aspect of this. As you said, it's on a former canvas awning, and then do you sort of lay a white background and then work forward with the figure?
I don't really do anything. I just snip and tear and rip and glue and until it comes together. My idea of collage, because I'm not in the sense a traditional. I'm not a collagist in the sense that a lot of collage is about putting something very big next to something very small, or the incongruous coupling of things. And I'm the opposite of that. I'm interested in taking things that don't fit together and making them fit together. So I'm interested in things being plausible, not ridiculing, but trying to amass a plausibility out of disparate objects, times, places. There are probably about 50 or 60 different images that are put together to make this one work as a whole. None of them actually were originally one thing. So, and that's where painting comes in, because painting's all about just making things work with marks, and this is making things work with things that shouldn't actually work, but you can make them work. And that was the challenge, and that's always the challenge for me in collage.
Yes, she emerges very effectively from that surface and holds the surface very well. Is there something that fascinates you about using found objects, or that is advantageous?
I've always been interested in finding things, and when I was at school, I was the scenic painter for the arts club at theater for about 2 months, and that's how I made my money. And what they did at the arts club theater is they threw out the sets, and I always thought what a waste it was, 4x8 sheets with great things on them. And so I dragged these things back to the school, and I started working over the top of them. And I also didn't have any money, so free materials. And then I started to react to what was on it, the surface, the texture, the form, the color, and it gave me a way to start just working. And that's how working on found objects happened. And then it went from there. Every time I moved to a different country or a different place, I would find something to work on, whether it was a suitcase or a curtain or a fabric or a wall, a tarp, a tent, and it goes on and on from there. And they always sort of spell out where I was at the time. And,
that's brilliant. And yeah, the textural effect is very evident in this piece, as well as musical notes.
Yes.
Perhaps we can move to the next image, Justine.
yeah, and another image with alpha girls. This one, you know, sort of all of 12, looking very menacing and brutal. And I just sort of, it echoes back to times when you thought that those people that looked like that were just so terrifying to you, and that you had to somehow adjust to that world, or be accepted, or try to be in it. And it was quite menacing, and still the same today, I'm sure. Anyway, also a very big piece.
Your use of color, just little, drips of blue and red, is very sparing. Can you speak to how color plays a role in these works?
Well, mostly they're black and white and bits in between, but then because I'm a painter, I like to sort of throw in a bit of color here and there to bring it up. And also, it's probably that it actually was over another piece. I often work on top of other pieces, so it was probably a painting underneath. And I like that happenstance. I like the accidents, and I like where that can go. And it helps me to just associate this with that and let it happen. I do not edit when I work. I let it happen, and the more I let it happen, the better things are usually.
Yeah, there's a great sense of labor and intuitiveness, and as you said, you let all the happy things that appear on the image continue. I believe the next image is that of a boy. Is that correct? Oh no, this image. I love this.
Oh yeah. Well, this explains. I work very much solo. I like to be alone for chunks of my day and just do what I do. And so I see myself as a very solo artist. But the truth be known, I also see myself as part of a group. And that group developed in art school, actually. And that group, the names are up on the side of that poster. We are still very close friends and do projects together. We do shows together. We have actually charitable initiatives that we do, all kinds of things. And we enjoy each other's company. Each of us have our independent career, but we also come together for great things. And we were given, or there was a school in Vancouver, the decommissioned school in North Vancouver, that they were going to pull down. And Artists for Kids, I think it was, gave us the keys and said, hey, do whatever you want in the school and make an installation. So we had the keys to this old school and all the things that were left in it. Old schools are like prisons or, anywhere else, are just full of old memories and skeletons and, feelings. And it was pretty intense, and it was empty. And in that school, I found, we were allowed to take what we wanted, and I found the music sheet, or a few of the music sheets, and I took those because they were flat and they were surfaces I could work in. And we went on, next slide, to create this installation, which is much larger than this, but I don't want to give you too many images. So that was it. And it was very, very interesting. It was interesting to work in that school. And more can be done with schools. They're just
absolutely.
So yeah.
Okay, let's go on to the next work if we can.
Okay.
There's the
Sorry.
image of the young boy.
I don't know how we're doing time-wise. Okay. This is a body of work I did just before that, in something I call the basement show, also on large pieces of watercolor paper that 4 feet wide by about 8 foot children in distress, I think we might call that. There's a mother underneath. They're lying flat, but it's called Sorry Mother. Yeah, it was a kind of explosive time in my life. What can I say? Yeah.
When we talked about this earlier, you said that, you know, there was, I guess, an intonation of violence in the way that this is rendering. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think the stance of the child and the expression of his frustration and despair, and that's echoed with the drips and the black and the white and the splash and the figure underneath it, the mother. I mean, I could go on about that for years, but I won't. It just happens. It just happened. You know, it echoes your life. I mean, when you make paintings, they just echo things that you're thinking about and worlds that you're inhabiting, and you express them, and that's why it's great to be an artist.
And just, I'm curious about, you know, the splashing and the dripping effect in this body of work. Is that sort of the last thing that you do in the rendering process?
I don't think it's last. It happens all. It's really sometimes happens quite fast, and you don't know which is first. I don't know where the wallpaper came in. You know, the wallpaper. Did I put that on because I wanted some reference to the domestic world, or was it there to begin with? I cannot remember. Was this piece was probably a piece that was vertical, and it had a mother or a woman in it, and then I put it on its side, and that happened to it. So then we've got this collision of ideas, and somehow it works.
Very much
Again,
so.
I step back from being responsible here, but I'm quite happy that it did happen. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you can't
great.
really go
Okay.
back into that place where you were when you created that, because I can feel it now when I see it, that it was a very intense moment, and it was authentic then.
Okay. And so we'll go to the last image in this series.
Yeah, this is a very violent image in a way. Also, we don't know. I look at it now and I think, what was I going through? What was going on with these? Obviously, it was about children's cruelty, it seems, or their lack of kindness. They seem to be doing something to this figure lying down. I cannot, again, tell you how or why that happened, but it did. And I think, obviously, I was thinking about lots of things then that I'm not thinking about now. I think being a mother is very, very taxing, and being an artist and a mother, and being an artist and a single mother, and being an artist and a broke single mother, and all of that stuff put together comes out quite explosively sometimes.
Absolutely. There's definitely a very direct energy when you're looking at these works. And we'll conclude just with a return to musical notes. Anything to wrap up the discussion of this piece before we move to the Q&A?
That's how she came out. She was born from the school project. She had already been created through the Alpha Girls, and yet she seems to be more vulnerable than those other girls that were in the images, much more vulnerable and wistful. I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you for putting this piece in the collection, which is actually just gone on display here in the second last of our permanent gallery. And now we'll move to the Q&A part, and we're very happy to have multiple questions come in, and we'll vet a few of them here. The first question comes from Susie in Vancouver. Can you please talk about the image of yourself that you used for the promotional registration component of this TNT episode?
Oh, the image of me in that sort of frame, I think probably she's referring to. I had an empty, I was making photographs, or I had a good friend photographer in my studio called Brian Howell, who's an artist and photographer and friend. And we were trying to figure out ways to make an image of me for somebody that wanted one. And so I sort of posed within the frame of one of these empty frames that I was about to put a collage into. And when I looked at it, I realized that I was looking like possibly one of my collages, and that I was possibly turning into one of my pieces of art, which wouldn't be surprising because I spent a lot of time making them, but I'd sort of now become part and parcel of the entire process, which is probably funny.
Absolutely, and that's what I thought. You actually look like one of your works. The next question comes from Ivana in Coquitlam. Who are the artists that have most influenced you, and why?
Okay, well, I won't tell you the ones that are, the ones that are influencing me now, or the ones that I look at the most, are probably women for the most part. Alice Neal, because she's a painter and a lovely painter, and Hannah Hawk, because she is the master of collage and has yet to be surpassed. Marina Abramovich, because I just feel her a lot. Cindy Sherman, because she's just led the way for so much. Marlena Dumas, because she's all so painterly. Rebecca Belmore, because of her incredible intensity, which amazes me. And Tracy Emin, because she's just so inspiring and moving to me right now. But when I was growing up, there was a man that was a very important influence on me. And now that I look at my work, I realize that he was very important. And his name was Franz Mazzarello. And my parents had books of his in our bookshelf, and they were called Books Without Words. And they were black and white woodcuts. And I remember one in particular that they were all incredible, socio-critical stories. He was very left, and it was in the 1920s. And my parents were very left, and so they had a lot of political artists. And this book, there's a man sitting at a desk in the images, and there's delivery of a letter to the table, and out from a letter steps a woman, a tiny woman, and they fell in love, and the rest of it's horrible. But it's, I just go back to those books all the time, and I think they're very important. And I think that's where I get this narrative idea, and the black and white, and the stark storytelling narrative possibilities there.
Well, thank you. That's some great references, and you can see many of those people that you spoke to in all of your work. Megan from Seattle asks, how do you deal with artist blocks, or do you even have them?
I don't have artist blocks, or at least I'm trying to find some wood here. But I don't have artist blocks in that sense, because I don't really look for inspiration for things. They just are one. I think, in a way, it's silly though it sounds, I think I've always been making the same image over and over again from the beginning till now. I just find different ways to address it, whether it's materials, color, form. I mean, if I get bored and I'm bored with one thing, I'll change the color that I'm working with, or I'll change the form that I'm working with. It just doesn't happen that I get blocks. I'm always so happy to get in the studio that it's a celebration. Yeah, I've never quite understood that, because I don't wait for those moments of inspiration, because I'm not working on one particular thing that has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Okay, so definitely no moments of eureka, if you will. Our last question.
No, I didn't say that. I have the eurekas, but I just don't get the blocks.
Okay. Our last question comes from Crystal in Vancouver, and she asks, how do you approach the idea of resistance as an artist?
Resistance? Well, that's a sort of ambiguous question, but in a way, maybe she's referring to a body of work that I actually made called Molds of Resistance, which are in the slides coming up, actually. Should we go to the next slide?
Sure.
Okay, this is one of the images from bodies of the Models of Resistance. It sort of marked, I think that the Alpha Girls grew up a lot in this body of work. They got older. This came to me from some images I found from amateur erotica, if you will. I don't know what it was. It was horrible, but it was women posing in motel rooms in the 50s, black and white, very exploitative images of women, and they were very moving, because they didn't look like they were having a very good time, and I felt very moved, and so one of the things that I did with them is that I thought I would put clothes on them, and so they also got combined with things like puppets. And they got things got added, like hair, and so they became again my new actors. And go to the next slide. Yeah, the next slide. Yeah, and then they're actually they are the size of a doll. So when I make them, they're the size of a doll. So the reason why I did that was because I found doll clothes, and I thought, well, if I want to make these really work, they have to be the same size as the doll clothes. So they are. And if you see behind me on the wall, it's my prop room, my dressing room, where I have clothes that, would you mind if I just walk over here? Things that I now collect doll clothes, a lot of them. So this I have a beautiful little hat. So, I'll find a hat and I'll think, that is an exquisite hat. And sorry, is that near the camera? And yeah. Recently, some white gloves. So, these are very loaded images, and I look for ways that I can incorporate them into my bodies of work, which is, I've got one here, which I can sort of put together, and things are very evocative. Because they create all kinds of associations, and that's how that body of work develops. Do we have another slide of that? We have another slide. Oh, yeah. Yeah, she looks like she's in some kind of pain. Yeah, she's got a bolero hat.
And how do you find the transition from what is essentially collage to these are edging into what I would consider assemblage?
Oh yeah, in fact, I'm actually working on something that would almost be considered to be three-dimensional models, which I think actually I've always been trying to do. So I'm actually going that way. I want to make actual things, dolls, doll-ish.
Well, that's a very interesting transition within the context of what you're doing currently. And maybe let's go to the next image, Justine. And this is a little different.
Yeah, a doll breastfeeding a doll. Yeah, I cannot really say much about that. It's sort of puppetry and echoing motherhood, our roles, very sort of not making too much sense, but does to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we've got, is this our last?
This is actually,
there we go.
We're doing well actually on time. This is a
We're
new body
perfect.
of work that I'm working on for, I'm going to show it at the Capture Festival in April. So, and it's about work. It's called Works. And it's about our relationship to work, which is funny because I started this body work before the recent events in the world. And so now it's become even more important to me because everybody seems to be out of work and our relationship to work is now much more precarious. So it's about that relationship that most of the work, you know, I'm referring to as servile. These are people that work in, and yet they maintain their sense of who they are. And that was about, you know, it was to do with class and that relationship. What's the next one? Slide? Oh yeah, a busboy, sort of running happily to his work. Yeah, he's got all kinds of different. If you could see it, it's again very large, and he's running towards. He's got kinds of different references in his clothes. So clothing is very important in my work because it does reference not just who you are, but the time that you were and your relationship to it. And I think there's. Mm-hmm.
There's one more. I'm just curious about how you configure those backgrounds. They have a slightly cubist feel to them.
That's actually just, that's why I keep all that. It's not really, it's again random, but the random nature of it creates all of these associations like cubism and that relationship to collage. And I like to keep the rip, the tear, the evidence of how the image is made. It's not about making a seamless image that no one could, how did she do that? No, I'm not interested in that. I want you to know exactly how I did it and exactly why that relationship is. I mean, these are all different types of parts of bodies put together, somehow making sense.
Yes, yeah, there is a very obvious assembly process that the viewer is let in on. And let's move to the last image here, and perhaps you can close out with a discussion of this current work.
Sort of, I don't know if you can see it any better than I can. I hope you can. It's the back of a mother, but she's also made out of children. There's sort of children within her. And she has doll legs, which are attached to a stand. So she's sort of impossible to leave this because she's not really real. I mean, she's not really real in any way. She's a doll part. She's on a stand. She's immobile, and yet her role is it's in the relation to work, the work of women and mothering, and so it sort of goes all over that. So the work is going to be in a very expanded sense of the word work.
Okay, well, that's where we'll wrap up, Angela. And I just want to say thank you. The way in which you've moved from musical notes right up into your current collage and assemblage-based work, I'm sure has been very informative for our viewers. I want to thank the entire team here at the Audain Art Museum, who continue to offer what I would call a cultural resilience in the midst of a health crisis. I want to express my respect and appreciation for the ongoing support of Michael Audain and Yoshi Karasawa. I also want to acknowledge the guidance and contribution of our trustees here at the museum, as well as our founders, who again are critical to us propelling forward in these difficult times. As always, I want to thank our TNT crew, our director-producer, Justine Nickel, our quality control controller, Nadine Hassan. And then, as always and every week, we have a few shout-outs, always to my dad in Cornwall, Ontario, my little sister, Susie, in Canada. Barbara Ann says hello to Pamela in Vancouver. And lastly, on behalf of Angela, I want to thank David James for his technical assistance in Angela's studio. And of course, our sponsor for this season 2, HSBC Bank Canada. And next week, we'll have Christos Dikiakos as our guest. And so I want to wave goodbye to you from the shared territories of the Squamish and Lillooet nations. And thank you for your time from Gastown tonight, Angela.
Thanks so much. I cannot wait to get up there and see it in situ. I would love to see the show that's on. I cannot wait to see Rebecca's show.
And as soon as we can travel, you'll be more than welcome to come through, and I'd love to walk you through the show. So Perfect. Good night, everyone, and thank you for your time.